I have a question for you. Have you ever been introduced to someone, they tell you their first name, you're standing there looking straight at them, and just a few seconds later, that name has completely vanished from your mind? And in that moment, you start to question yourself. You think, is there something wrong with my memory? Is this normal? If that scenario sounds familiar to you, I want you to keep watching because by the time we finish this video, you're going to know exactly why this happens, and more importantly, you're going to have several practical tools to make sure it never happens to you again. Now, let's talk about the core insight that most people completely miss. The reason names are so difficult for our brains to retain is that they are, by their very nature, almost completely devoid of meaning. Pause and consider that for just a moment. When you look at a face, you see structure, you see expressions, and you see emotion. When you hear a voice, you pick up on tone, pitch, and cadence. But a name? A name comes with no inherent mental image, no sensory hook to latch onto. It's just a label. So when that label is introduced, it lands in your working memory, which is a system managed by your prefrontal cortex. The problem is that working memory has a very limited capacity and is incredibly susceptible to disruption. On top of that, we have to account for everything else going on in that social situation. When you're meeting somebody new, your brain is operating on multiple levels at the same time. It's managing eye contact. It's scrambling to figure out what you're going to say next. It's analyzing the dynamic of the interaction, and it's also dealing with your own self awareness. This isn't just busy, it's stressful. Even a mild amount of social pressure is enough to raise our cortisol levels. And cortisol is not our friend here because it directly interferes with the hippocampus, which is the specific region of the brain responsible for converting short term impressions into long term, lasting memories. What this means is that the name simply never gets locked in. It disappears because the whole process gets interrupted before it can even begin. Now, I want to make sure you understand something that is truly important. This kind of forgetting is not the same thing as memory loss. In situations involving neurodegenerative diseases, you see people struggling to remember familiar people, familiar places, and significant life events. That's completely different from what we're talking about here. In the scenario we're discussing, the name was never actually recorded in your brain's storage system in the first place. Recognizing that distinction is incredibly important. It should give you a great deal of comfort to realize that your brain is working exactly as it's designed to, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. So, with that understanding in place, let me walk you through several powerful techniques. Even if you just decide to practice a couple of these, I promise you they can make a real and lasting difference. Technique number one is what I call repetition and engagement. When you're told a name, I want you to say it back to the person, one time, out loud. This is really important. Not two or three times, just once. The simple act of speaking the name activates additional neural circuits in your brain, beyond just hearing it. And that immediate activation significantly strengthens the memory trace. Technique number two is visual anchoring. You take that name and you consciously attach it to something that you can actually see. Maybe it's a distinct facial feature, the way they style their hair, a pair of glasses, or their posture. The hippocampus, the memory center in our brains, is far better at storing images than it is at storing words. So, what you're doing is transforming an abstract, intangible name into something concrete and visual. Technique number three involves movement, a very small physical action like subtly tapping a finger, shifting your weight from one foot to the other, or giving a slight nod can activate the motor networks in your brain. And when you get memory, attention, and movement all firing at the same time, the quality of encoding improves significantly. This happens because neurotransmitters like acetylcholine and dopamine increase, which is essentially a signal to your brain that the information it's currently processing is worth keeping. Technique number four is emotional tagging. Emotions serve as a powerful anchor for memory, but you don't need to feel something intense. Even a mild feeling of interest or curiosity can be effective. Just silently and intentionally think to yourself, this person matters, or I want to remember this name. That intention, that conscious thought by itself, is enough to boost hippocampal engagement, which will dramatically improve your retention. Technique number 5 is all about timing. The optimal window for encoding a name is within the first few seconds of hearing it. If you miss that initial window, the brain naturally moves on to other information. This is exactly why trying to recall a name later on feels so difficult and frustrating. You have to catch the name early while the door is still open. Now, I want to explain why this whole process tends to get more challenging with age, fatigue, and stress. When we are tired, the brain simply has fewer energetic resources to allocate to working memory. Dehydration and poor sleep are particularly damaging because they reduce the efficiency of our neurotransmitters. And as we've already touched on, stress pulls activity and resources away from the hippocampus and directs them toward the amygdala. It's crucial to understand that none of this represents actual damage to your brain. It's simply a matter of resource allocation. The brain is distributing its energy where it feels it's needed most. So if you notice that this is happening to you more often when you're tired, in a hurry, or feeling overwhelmed, that is completely normal and expected. It's not a sign of cognitive decline, it's a sign of being human. Here is the most important takeaway of this entire discussion. Your brain is not broken. In fact, it's incredibly efficient. It prioritizes tasks related to survival and social processing over abstract labels like names. Once you truly understand that, you can stop blaming yourself and start working with your brain rather than against it. So the next time you're standing in front of someone new, I encourage you to just slow the moment down a little bit. Repeat their name once, consciously add a visual element, incorporate a small physical movement, and put some genuine intention behind it. That specific combination will give your hippocampus exactly what it needs to properly store that name, so you won't have to experience that awkward moment of forgetting ever again. If this video helped you better understand how your brain works, please share it with someone who always says, "I'm terrible with names." And just so you know, I'm right there with you. I struggle with this too. So, I truly hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to share it with your friends and family. Leave your thoughts and experiences in the comments below, and most importantly, make it a great day for yourself and for others. I'm Dr. Alan Mandell.